I'm Guy and I help farmers get planning permission on their farms. And welcome back to the Farmers Planning Podcast. Today we have Morwenna, our farm planning consultant, and our CAD designer at Foxes Rural. And we're just going to talk about generally what you need to know on farms in terms of strategy. So Morwenna, welcome to the
Hello.
podcast.
Thank you.
You've been on it before?
No, I haven't. It's
All
my
right.
first time.
So not only is it your first time, it's a new venue for you as well.
Exactly. It's a bit fancy.
Oh yeah, it's nice. I quite like the microphones, and
Yeah, no pressure.
we normally have this tiny little microphone, so like you're spoiled with this. Yeah, so I just wanted to talk about what farmers need to know in terms of farm strategy. So we've sat on a few calls recently with clients, haven't we? And one of the things we find is that they don't have much idea in terms of strategy. There's a lot of shooting from the hip, and there's a real mix of views out there. And I get why people are doing it. They're trying to come up with ideas. We've got high fuel prices, high fertilizer prices, all margins are getting squeezed. So trying to diversify and do new things. And I think what we do differently is that we'll always look at stuff strategically. We've got a team of quite strategically minded people. So we're always looking at the strategy first, aren't we? And really, farmers, before they do any planning on their farm, need to look at their overall farm strategy, because what farmers won't realise sometimes is that there will be a crossover, won't there? So you might do some planning for something here, which then affects your long-term problems over here that you want to develop next. So you've got to look at everything first and make sure that you come up with a planning strategy that's right. So what would happen in a strategic case, I suppose, when you're looking at a farm? What would happen? You'd take a call from a client, or how would you approach it?
Yeah, so we might get a call or an email from a client who they may have just taken over the farm. It may be sort of a succession situation, and they've got some buildings, they've got plans, they've got ideas, but they don't really know how to get there.
Yeah.
And I think the main sort of strategy is taking that wide picture view of it. If you're not looking at everything as a whole, you may jeopardize things down the line.
Yeah.
So when those clients come to us with those ideas, for us, it's very good to look into obviously the site and the constraints and things like that, but also to make sure that we're giving them a correct order to do things.
Yeah.
To make sure that they're not jeopardizing anything down the line.
And I think what we would try and do is we try and cut out where we think their chances aren't realistic on something. So there's a lot of agents out there that will say, oh yeah, we can go for a house, and they'll just do stuff reactively. So put an application in without any strategy behind it, and they're told it's a certain price, and then this survey costs more, this survey costs more, and before they know it, the client's been probably 5 times what they've actually needed to. Whereas if they'd have just done a strategic appraisal at the start,
Absolutely,
then they'd know that up front as to what the actual total cost would be. I think our favourite route is, well, the inquiry we get the most of would be, can I build a house on this piece of land?
Absolutely.
And what would you say the perception is nationally in terms of building a piece of land? Building a house on the piece of land. It's everyone thinks it's possible, and 9 times out of 10 it's not.
Absolutely.
Is that realistic?
I think at the moment, obviously, you read the headlines, and the government at the moment, it's all sort of build new houses, build. But that's not feeding down to a local level, and especially in the countryside. At the moment, the planning policy isn't there to support it unless there is sort of an agricultural need.
Yeah.
Something like, you've got breeding cattle, or breeding livestock, and you need to be there to make sure that, that they're looked after. Unless you've got an extreme situation like that, at the moment, the planning policy generally isn't there to support it at a local level, unfortunately.
Yeah. And you head up a lot of our stage 1 appraisals. So you're basically looking at the strategy of the farms when the client inquires. And I would say, what are the opportunities that you're finding out of a lot of those, what we call stage 1 reports? Are you finding it's commercial? Is it agricultural? What's the root of that?
So I think with most of our stage 1s, actually taking a step back and thinking, how can we keep the farm going as an agricultural enterprise whilst also diversifying.
Yeah.
The cost of, like you said earlier, fuel, fertilizer, everything's gone up. So the farming enterprise alone is struggling. So actually looking at those older buildings that have been up that are currently, in an okay state, but being able to change the use of those into something like a commercial storage, put up a new barn under your permitted development rights first, and then do that change of use on the older barn, you're not jeopardising one or the other, but you're diversifying your income streams. And I think that's imperative at the moment.
Yeah. And what would you say is the most common farm diversification thing at the moment?
There's sort of two streams. One is going to be obviously your storage and distribution, back to your paddle courts.
Paddle courts. How many paddle courts do you think there are going to be nationally soon?
There's going to be quite a few in farmers' barns. But the idea of a sports venue, whether that be paddle, whether that be something else, actually in one of your redundant barns isn't, it's not a bad idea at all.
I think it's fantastic. I mean, I think the paddle market's still rising.
Absolutely.
I think we see a mixture of the types of planning. So that's when we sort of saying, well, paddle's one that's quite common, but you've actually got quite an extreme of planning cases with it. You've got one that might just be a straightforward paddle install internally, might be a change of use, might already have a permissions that we're just varying.
Yeah.
So that's going to be much more straightforward than, say, the new build paddle court in an open field or a building that needs significant renovation or something like that. And they've all got different angles.
Absolutely.
And actually in the office this morning, we were talking about the strategy on one. We were saying, actually, there's 2 or 3 strategies or angles that the client could take with this, which is going to be the most effective and which is going to be the most successful.
Absolutely. And, that's where the strategy from the outset is imperative, because actually you could spend a lot of money converting one of your barns or leaving agricultural and going for a planning on a new build, when actually the strategy from the outset should have been to convert that older building. Because, we've spoken before about Class R being sort of a streamlined approach to planning. And actually, if you've got those opportunities to use your Class R rights, then that's, going to be a far more successful application than a new build in the open countryside that the planners may not like too much.
Yeah. I think what you're getting at is trying to use permitted development rights first.
Absolutely.
So over full planning, because full planning comes with a lot of additional costs and surveys. And the permitted development rights on farms are quite far reaching, aren't they?
They are indeed. And with your full planning applications, you're subject to ecology, and, ecology can be lovely, people. But if there's bats or if there's newts, then, we're into trouble. Whereas,
get your checkbook out.
Yeah, exactly. So, by using your permitted development rights, you can remove some of those layers of complexity. And if you can, then that is definitely the route you need to go down to make sure that your farm, balances its books.
So the farmers that are listening, what's one tip that comes out of a stage 1? What do you find that's most common that you're finding?
Most common is we need to look at the wider picture.
Yeah.
Whether that is, we need to make sure that the farming stays viable. We don't want to be changing a barn and then trying to get a new one later down, a year later, because you've not got the space, because actually the planners may think, well, hang on a minute.
Yeah.
You didn't need it a year ago. So making sure that you're balancing the farming agriculture enterprise with your new diversification strategies.
Yeah, no, thanks so much for coming in today and giving us your insight on it. And farmers, keep building those paddle courts, because, the trend is there.